Undiplomatic is an unscripted and unfiltered podcast hosted by Hyatt-Khan that will explore the intersection of business, politics and culture in Slovakia with a host of high-level guests across the spectrum telling their stories. So, after a small hiatus, Undiplomatic, the name of my podcast, is back. And as you can see, I'm not in my usual happy dat. I'm at a brand new venue and I'm on the road, and I'm very honoured to have His Majesty's Ambassador to the Slovak Republic, Bilal Zahid, welcome me in your home. Thank you very much, Bilal, for having me.
Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Delighted to have you here today.
So let's start with the easy one. You haven't been ambassador in Slovakia for very long. It's a few months.
Yeah, since September.
Since September. How are you bedding in? How are you settling in here?
I'm settling in really well. Thank you so much. You're here in the British residence, and I've had the real privilege of hosting numerous events here and getting to know various parts of Slovak society. And since September, I've travelled quite a bit across this beautiful country. So I've been as far east as Košice and to many other parts. I also had the opportunity to study here. So even though I started officially in September, I did study Slovak language for a month in June.
We'll quiz you on your Slovak a little bit later.
You can quiz me on my Slovak. But no, it's been a really great start. I mean, everyone, as you know, sort of living here yourself, are so welcoming. And I found that from the politicians I've met right through to different civil society groups and organisations. So it's been
So you're comfortable
great.
now, and you're comfortable now in Slovakia. Say you're at home.
I would say I feel at home. I'm, as you could probably tell from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland. So the island of Ireland is kind of not too dissimilar to Slovakia in terms of the population, in terms of the beautiful countryside. And of course, lucky to live here near the Slaven Memorial. So certainly kind of feel at home here. And it's not too far from London as well. So there's that kind of psychological aspect of being able to nip home. And I've had plenty of visitors come see me as well.
We'll touch a little bit on the Northern Irish element in a bit. I'm delighted that you feel at home. This is now, I think, my 9th here in Slovakia. So
Wow.
I finally feel at home also, nearly after a decade. I want to touch a little bit about some of the things that people may be interested about. You, according to your bio, this is your second decade in the Foreign Office. Mm-hmm. You're born in Northern Ireland. You've got Pakistani heritage, like I do, and you are ambassador of the United Kingdom, His Majesty's ambassador of the United Kingdom in Slovak Republic, and you were previously in Kiev, amongst other political roles. Did you always know you wanted to be in the Foreign Office? Was it something a 15-year-old Bilal said, I'm going to serve my country and I'm going to be a diplomat?
Well, do you know what? My first career ambition when I was 15 years old was to be a pilot. But physics was not a strong subject for me. So I think that went out the window. But I've always been curious about kind of foreign affairs.
Sure.
As you alluded to, I have Pakistani heritage. I grew up in Northern Ireland. And was very lucky to travel quite a lot as a youngster. So I was always curious about the world, curious about people, and always had a sense of kind of public duty and wanting to give back. So in school, I enjoyed kind of doing numerous kind of voluntary projects and had that kind of sense of wanting to do something kind of outside the commercial world. So I had kind of friends and others who were going on to be kind of lawyers and work in that field, but it kind of felt different for me. So I actually joined the civil service, so kept the Home Civil Service initially, based in Northern Ireland, and worked in numerous roles. Kind of fast forward some almost 20 years. You described it.
Old enough. You don't look old enough to have worked in the Foreign Office
or the civil service.
Civil service for 20 years.
So now I'm here. So it's absolute privilege to be in this role.
Well, funny thing that maybe some of my viewers and certainly some of my listeners might not know is that prior to you arriving in Bratislava, I think you're right, you were studying for a while here, learning the language. I was going to receptions and people were saying, "Oh, hello, Excellency." And not because I'm called Slovak ambassador on my social media, But they actually, some people who hadn't met me, if you can imagine, there are a few people still who haven't met me,
Right.
thought I was you.
Oh, there we go. Look, we're looky likes, right?
So I don't know if that's a good thing, or I hope you don't take that as an insult.
That's a massive compliment.
Oh, thank you very much. So we're on the same. So it was funny, and then I said, no, I think Ambassador is yet to arrive, and he's a little bit taller, and definitely a lot younger than me. So yes, it was interesting to have that kind of also that kind of anticipation for your arrival. Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads me to my next question. I was chatting to Monica, who is also a lifer here in the embassy, at your embassy, and a fabulous asset to your team, by the way, about Nigel Baker. So Nigel has just left, and big shoes to fill. And this kind of like career diplomat, and this very, very significant person, stood up for a lot of things that I think values that you share too. Were you worried coming to Bratislava that you had to kind of forge your own path?
Well, I mean, firstly, you could mention big shoes to fill, and absolutely. Nigel have served here with distinction, and this was his second time back in Slovakia. So, of course, he was here before when we opened our embassy, and then served here for 5 years. Incredible linguist and spoke the language. So, yeah, of course, there's always that element of, I think, in any role when you succeed from someone that you're kind of thinking about, the impressive legacy they left. And I mean, so firstly, I'm really grateful for what Nigel has done over the past 5 years in the posting, really to kind of create a great embassy culture. And you mentioned Monica. We have many wonderful people like Monica in our embassy. So kind of part of that was also really reassuring, knowing that, as British embassies and high commissions across the world, we're lucky in having a mixture of diplomats who kind of come in and maybe do Ukraine is 2 years, somewhere like Slovakia is 4 or 5 years. But we're so lucky having colleagues, locally employed colleagues, many of who are with you for many years and have got that tremendous experience, that local knowledge. So combined, I felt confident coming here. I felt very excited as well. So I've always been kind of fascinated by this region as a whole. And clearly, I could have followed the news. I wasn't kind of blind to kind of what was happening and debates and discussions, whether it be on Ukraine or some of the false accusations made against Nigel. But I'm, to some degree, and I guess have worked in Northern Ireland and having worked for the coalition government, I feel kind of naturally comfortable operating in that environment while being really clear about my political impartiality as a diplomat, also being able to navigate complex environments. So I felt comfortable, I felt excited. And as I said, kind of really well supported by the team.
So it's funny you mentioned the team. I've done my digging with all the people that I've spoken to, and most of your closest staff are people who aren't alien to me. I'm fortunate to know quite a lot of people at the embassy, and the feedback is resoundingly positive. Everybody loves working for you or with you. Rather. So there's lots of positive feedback, and they say just how approachable and amenable and relaxing. Do you think you're bringing kind of like a new wave of diplomacy in?
That's really kind. I must kind of, send this recording to my line manager. That's great feedback.
And no, we're not sponsored.
Yes, I think, I guess kind of everyone brings their own kind of style and their own kind of experience to a role and their own priorities as well. So, and the same applies to kind of anyone, whether they have served for many years in the diplomatic service, like Nigel did, or myself, who has a different background. So I think everyone brings their unique perspectives, their unique background, and their own priorities, and that's something I'm working through. And I mean, certainly there's a large degree of consistency in what we do, and we're sent here as His Majesty's ambassador, but the government's kind of ambassador. So security, kind of prosperity, strengthening people-to-people links is all quite consistent.
Absolutely.
But I think within that there is kind of scope to kind of think about areas where I want to particularly focus on. So I mentioned I'm from Northern Ireland. I care deeply about nature and kind of preserving nature. and we're very lucky in this residence having a beautiful garden
Yeah.
around us. So that might be one area where I want to, have my own little domain to focus on. Yeah.
And you mentioned, of course, you were in Kiev for 2 years, and the commitment, the UK's commitment to Ukraine, remains unwavering, regardless of administration. Now, coming from literally a war zone into a neighboring country, often with a complicated DNA of opinions with regards to the war. Are there any key messages that you feel that you can bring from your time in Ukraine? And how was it, honestly, how was it from a human perspective working in a war-torn environment?
So just to take your second question, it was a challenge, both professionally and personally, kind of working in that environment. And I was minister consular, so I was responsible for some external elements, but also the internal elements of keeping our staff safe. So that was hugely kind of challenging. But also, my time was incredibly inspirational in Ukraine. I worked in Ukraine policy before the full-scale invasion, so being able to serve there and see firsthand the incredible determination, the bravery of Ukrainians, but also the support they had from allies and from neighbours, including Slovakia, who really stood up and helped support Ukraine straight after the invasion and have continued to support Ukraine, has been a real privilege and really inspirational. And my message, is the Ukrainians are highly resilient. They are their own people. They have they have clear Ukrainian identity, and I think if that will triumph over everything else. And I've discussed in previous interviews about how much of a strategic mistake it was for Putin to invade Ukraine, because the spirit of the Ukrainian people and the strength is something I really has really been
Left
a massive
imprint.
a huge impression on me since leaving.
Is that you as ambassador or minister counselor when you were in Ukraine are privy to very sensitive information about the DNA of what's transpiring that perhaps the layman isn't aware of? Is there a misconception that we have in the West? Some people are talking about it, fatigue. Is our ambition to support Ukraine waning in certain areas? You said quite rightly that Slovakia has supported Ukraine, not without complication, of course. Poland almost unequivocally, and the neighbours in varying capacities, Czech Republic, of course, and Hungary, a little bit less perhaps than Ukraine would like. But you're there, you're working there, and you're privy to certain information that we are not. Is there something that you feel that the West is not hearing that is true that we should remember?
So in terms of the fatigue question, I think I can only speak for the UK government in terms of what we've said publicly, and the Prime Minister has been really clear that our support for Ukraine is ironclad. It's kind of strong. It's in Bolshevinsky silny, velmi silny. So that's kind of the UK position, and we're demonstrating that through our kind of military support or humanitarian support to ensure that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position for peace, for negotiations. Of course, we want peace, but we want to make sure Ukraine is in the strongest possible position in those negotiations, and they have it on their terms, are not kind of forced into it. So that's kind of, I think, a really important point. But in terms of the wider implications of the Ukraine war, I think there's not just. I think it would be a mistake just to look at our response to what's happened in Ukraine alone. I think there's been a real, it's been eye-opening in terms of what it means for responding to that sort of unprovoked barbaric attack against another country by Russia. So NATO has also stepped up, and then this is why I said earlier that it's been a strategic mistake for Putin. NATO got 2 more members. NATO members have kind of committed to increasing defence spending, including the United Kingdom. So actually, I think that's been a real eye opener from that perspective in terms of really needing to look at our own security. And then, of course, recently we've got the Coalition of the Willing, which the UK has co-chaired with the French. Exactly. So we had there was a meeting in Paris earlier this year as well, which focused on how a coalition can come together in support of Ukraine.
So coming back now a little bit to Slovakia, it's clear that the UK's message on Ukraine is unwavering. I'm proud that both administrations, both governments continue the support for Ukraine. It shows a measure of consistency and logic, certainly in my mind. Now coming back to Slovakia, fast forward now to where you are in your current role. You mentioned nature being an inherent part or an intrinsic part of what you would like your mission to look like in Slovakia. And we all know Slovakia is blessed with some of the nicest nature and some of the nicest ecotourism in Central Europe. In terms of moving it to business a little bit. Now, in my other role, I'm the Council of Slovak Exporters, chairman of the Council of Slovak Exporters. And our ambition is to help promote trade for Slovak businesses in larger markets and non-traditional markets. It often is the case. The relationship, the bilateral trade between Slovakia and the UK has always been lopsided, in my opinion. And that's UK investment into Slovakia. So large, whether it's Jaguar Land Rover, whether it's Tesco, whether it's Tate & Lyle, whether it's other large organizations. What would you like to see change in the balance in terms of trade coming from Slovakia to the UK? And similarly, where are your areas of focus in terms of forging stronger business alliances?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I agree with how you framed it, because certainly we have massive investors here in Slovakia. And I think by FDI, it's almost over a billion pounds in end of 2024, whereas that same period it was about a quarter into the UK and mainly into real estate. So I think there's definitely more potential to invest in the UK, and the UK is open for business. It is the infrastructure, the institutional strength. As you know yourself as a Brit, it's a pretty good place to do business. I think tech is a really interesting area.
Yep.
So I've mentioned, in my few months here, I've already managed to visit Košice and could visit Tech City.
Seems like you're in Banska Bystrica every other week.
I'm in Banska Bystrica, not every other week, but again in Banska as well. I'm meeting some incredible entrepreneurs. So I think there's definitely space to do more in tech. I've been impressed by some of the young entrepreneurs I've met. I met one recently who.
But what barrier do they have getting into the UK? Because I speak to a lot of people here, obviously in the business industry, and lots of them would love to be in the UK. Love to speak to UK investors or venture capitalists or meetings with big banks, and then there's this barrier, maybe a fear, perhaps, that they don't have the USP to make it in the UK or even the US for that matter. Do you think there are misconceptions on that side, or do you think that there are pathways for them to reach these goals?
I mean, I would love to speak to you more about this and what you're hearing and how we can help break those barriers, whether they are perceptions or whether they are actual barriers. But certainly, I know that our industrial strategy that was recently published is quite clear about what we're doing to reduce red tape and encourage businesses to do that. So one practical thing that we are looking forward to this summer is London Tech Week.
London Tech Week.
So London Tech Week is coming up, and we and our country team here, the Department for Business and Trade, our country director here, and her team are encouraging Slovak participation in London Tech Week. So we're looking for opportunities, for people to come to London and see for themselves, could be introduced to possible partners, and perhaps dispel some myths about what it's like to do business in the UK. Because, I agree there could be misconceptions. It might seem quite intimidating because it's such a huge market. So I think of things like that, where we've got these events. We had AI Summit recently as well. So again, encouraging delegations.
I just don't see enough Slovak private sector activity in the UK. Yes, there's some stuff in the defence, and yes, some stuff in the auto industry. Inabat, which has been, I'm sure you've heard of Goshen Inabat, which is the EOV battery production, has I think a factory in Huddersfield. So there are Slovak organs that have presence in the UK, but not enough for my liking. And I don't know whether that's misconception or myth. Similarly, I want to ask you, when you took up the role as ambassador to Slovakia, actually, I don't know, how is an ambassador appointed? Do they just say, this is a country for you? Or is it like pulled out of a hat? Or we think, oh, I think he'll fit in there? And also, when you were telling people that you were going to be ambassador to Slovakia, I can tell you, my parents didn't know much about Slovakia. My dad, yes, but my mum, not so much. What would people ask you? Where is Slovakia? How is it like that way around?
Yeah, so in terms of the appointment process, and it's kind of funny you asked me that, because it reminds me of whenever I first arrived, I had some people asking me whether I'd been sent here. Just, you know,
like a punishment.
Well, yeah, I've had that, which is ridiculous, because, you know, I applied for this role. So, you know, as you know, if Nigel's term was coming to its natural conclusion, and in our diplomatic service, you know, jobs overseas are highly kind of sought after, and particularly kind of ambassadorial jobs. So I spoke to Nigel, I spoke to other colleagues who worked in the region, and also colleagues who work here in the embassy, and just really did my homework about, you know, whether this was the right fit for me and this point in my career. And it sort of did feel like it was, and kept the stars aligned, and also kept the real privilege of being given language training as well, I thought would be a good challenge for me in this point in my career. So, I mean, absolutely, kind of, you know, applying for the job, going through quite a rigorous process as well. So it's not just the application, there are interviews, there are staff engagement exercises, it has to be approved by kind of numerous committees. And I think going through that makes you kind of even more sure this is something you want to do. So that's kind of the first point is, you know, absolutely, I want to be here. In terms of then, kind of whenever I told people about the job, I think yes, of course there were some people who, you know, had to be kind of told where Slovakia was on the map, and I guess that sort of was an illustration to me about some of the challenge I have in terms of
also how bad they are at geography.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, how bad they are at geography, and it's kind of Central Europe and not Eastern Europe. Absolutely, and just some. It's not Slovenia, it's Slovakia. This is a Slovak flag. So I think there's some basics around dispelling myths, but also I think like saying to myself, right, this is a challenge I've got now. Something I would love to do is just work through. You know, and also with my counterpart in London about how we can really strengthen connections between the two countries. And, you know, I'm, you know, friends are asking me, oh, we'd love to visit, and we can go, I can hear we can get to Austria easily for skiing. I'm like, no. We're not going west from Bratislava. We're going east, and I'm going to take you to Niski Tatry, Alebo, and Vysoké Tatry, and we will go skiing there. So
yeah, and I think you're right. Ambassador Susko is the Slovak ambassador to the United Kingdom. And I'm glad that relationship, I mean, let's be honest, the United Kingdom and Slovakia are good friends on several layers, whether that's trade, whether that's defense, cooperation agreements, all of the good stuff that ambassadors have to look after. I think the relationship is a strong one. In terms of, Monica, how much time do I have? You have to let... I'm fine, okay. I have to ask the boss how much time we have. I'm going to ask you a slightly more pointed question, and you can choose to be... I'll put your diplomacy to test here. You mentioned the vetting that you had to take the job and the role that the screening process works. The UK government's come in for a lot of scrutiny this week when Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to the United States, had to step down amid a real big controversy. And that put the vetting system in scrutiny. That was obviously a failure on behalf of the vetting system because of the Epstein files and the stuff that he was sharing. How do you as ambassador then, you know, react to these scenarios, and then what's the message from HQ when something like this happens?
I mean, so firstly, on that particular case, there's that process is ongoing. So there are documents being released around what happened around Peter Mantle's appointment as ambassador to the US, and what was known and should have been known. And as you mentioned, there's been the resignation of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, who acknowledged that he was responsible for that appointment, and he's taken responsibility for that by his resignation. I think, as the Prime Minister said this week, and has consistently said, he wants to really uphold the principles of conduct in public life. And in the UK, we've got a civil service code and a ministerial code, which we abide by. And of course, there's vetting as well, which is mainly around security vetting. So I think there's an acknowledgement, particularly around political appointments, around how that should be looked at and how that could be strengthened. So that's an ongoing process.
On a personal note, does that make you nervous when things like this happen? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Because the whole of the civil service and the foreign service is put under the microscope. It's not pleasant, is it?
Well, I think, for me, I'm pretty clear by, you mentioned I've been working for almost 20 years in the civil service, and including time in the Foreign Office. The vast majority of my colleagues, just really exemplify those principles of public service. So I feel very confident about what I stand for, the integrity of my colleagues. And I think, despite this this particular case, the UK civil service and diplomatic service is regarded in quite high esteem,
sure,
across the globe. So I feel confident.
Often the flag bearer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, often the flag bearer. I've in previous roles, we've had colleagues from other countries come and ask us, how does our civil service work? How are people appointed? How do you transition? From a something quite remarkable about our system is that we have an election and then immediately we have the next prime minister. There's no gap. And I think having a civil service that is politically impartial and demonstrate that political impartiality is really critical, and something my permanent secretary and others really focus on, because it's so important that ministers have that confidence that we are politically impartial.
So very diplomatic answer. Wow, well done. I'm as a British citizen or subject. I feel that obviously these allegations and the reports haven't done wonders for a lot of people. But we'll move on now to more positive things. Monica was mentioning to me that per capita, the DOE, the Duke of Edinburgh,
yes,
and you were recently baking with DOE.
I tried.
How are your baking skills?
My baking skills. If I had more
the
time,
wrong ambassador.
If I had more
Baker was a better name for
exactly
see what I did there.
Nigel Baker, yes, he was
I don't know if he could bake. I don't know if he could bake.
I don't know. I can't speak for his baking skills, but that was an incredible experience. So you mentioned the Duke of Edinburgh, the DOFA program, as it's known by its acronym here. Who I think they've almost 30,000.
Wow, that's the biggest, right? Per capita. One of the biggest. So we had a couple of the participants of that program come in, and then we had myself and a colleague from the embassy. We had a little bake-off challenge, and we made apple turnovers, which was a favorite of the late Prince Philip. So we had instructions, so that was fine. And so it's safe to say you don't bake at the residence.
I did bake, but when I have time, I would like to do more. I would love to do more. But it was an incredible experience, just learning something new. And I think it was in the spirit of the DOFA program where you could push yourself out of your comfort zone. Now, do you bake?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
And there are very few things that I can thank COVID for.
Right.
But
yes.
Baking is certainly one.
Okay.
So certainly not Prue Leith standard, but I definitely bake at home, and My go-to are brownies. I do pretty good. I do pretty good. My daughter does good cookies. I do good brownies and blondies as well.
Blondies, yeah.
So yeah, this stuff, and I think I baked at Christmas as well. So yeah,
Slovak baked goods.
not really babolka,
Babolka.
which is a family favorite, and anything with mac poppy seeds for the foreign
Poppy
audience.
seeds, yeah, maki.
I can't stand poppy seeds, but
okay.
but living here and not eating poppy seeds is almost a crime to humanity. So I have to do some of that. But yeah, I can bake, and I thank COVID for. There's very little to thank COVID for,
Yeah.
except learning how to bake.
Yeah.
So now we're in Slovakia. You're here. What does the next year look like for you? Obviously, it's so busy because we had to reschedule the interview to have it in your house, and now I'm delighted that we did, because the setting is infinitely nicer than my dark and dingy office. What are your key priorities for the next few months? You mentioned you went to Košice. You've been to Banska Bystrica a lot. The UK diaspora is wide. The British investment diaspora is also wide. Nitra. Obviously the home of Jaguar Land Rover, but the British investments everywhere, British interests everywhere. How are your next few months looking?
Yeah, great question. And I think if the new year and having a few months here has allowed me to focus a bit more on that with the team. So as I mentioned, the three main kind of driving priorities are working with Slovakia to make both countries more prosperous, kind of more secure, and strengthen our people-to-people links. And within that, there's various streams of work, including on our defence cooperation. I mentioned the Coalition of the Willing, and clearly some of that depends on what happens in Ukraine. So maintaining that. On prosperity, we've discussed some of this already, and I think it's about thinking about how we diversify some of the sectors while also being clear in Slovakia. We'd love to do more in energy in Slovakia. Slovakia relies heavily because of its geography and history on Russian gas and oil, but as demonstrated by a Urenco deal with Slovenská Elektronika over the summer, there is a UK offer in that space. So looking for those opportunities. And then people to people. So I really want to travel more. I'd love to hear your recommendations, though, for your listeners and viewers about what I should do more.
Well, definitely Trenčín, which is the European City of Culture for 2026.
Yes.
The kickoff party is, I think, next week. Or
I think it's Valentine's.
It's 13th, Valentine's Day. Yeah. So I don't know if you should be making the pilgrimage.
I will be there.
And I definitely recommend visiting Trenčín Castle. So one of the nicest castles. And of course, Luboš is my filmographer whenever I travel around the country. You can't go wrong with Trenčín. I'm slightly partial to Košice because my wife is from there. So I like going to Košice as much as I can, but generally the regions are worth exploring. And I'll tell you why. And I think the people are so receptive. Everybody in Bratislava is a little bit tense. There's a little bit more, the work concentration here is really intense in terms of, I guess, capital city wealth. It's a real country where the majority of the industry is focused in one part of the country. Even though there's regional industry, it's really intense here. So whenever I go out to the regions, you find a more chilled person. Everybody's welcoming, everybody's friendly. And I think even Luboš can attest to this on our, we're really well looked after. Žilina's nice, Trenčín's nice, Trnava was lovely. And that also places that aren't so far. Modra, Pezinok, also not far from here. If you like wine tours.
I visited Modra.
Modra, there you go.
Yeah, Nashville saw Modra, I think 2 weeks ago. Great
so
wine.
You'll know.
Ceramics.
Ceramics.
Majolika. And the a place where Ludovic Stier,
the custodian of the hardest language in the world.
Exactly. And I think there's a movie out in his honor.
Yes, there is,
which I've seen, so I need to watch that. But no, those are great recommendations. I think, as you described. So I mean, that's
and you said the skiing as well. So
skiing.
We go skiing in a place called Bachletka.
Bachletka,
which we also travelled with.
Dielako? Is it
it's not far. It's from Ždiar.
Okay.
So it's not far from the Kempinski and the nice fancy hotel.
Fabulous.
It's definitely worth skiing there. And my wife learned how to ski there, so there's an emotional connection to that slope. So the kids learned how to ski there too. I learned how to ski in Verbier, slightly different. slightly posher.
Yes.
But my wife's a much better skier. So definitely the skiing is something I recommend. And now on a human level, I think we've done the hard stuff.
Okay.
You've answered all the tough questions well.
Very good questions.
Thank you very much. And you had an interview with good friend Martin Kloos the other day. Was that it? Yeah. So you also said that if ever there was a need to speak out on big subjects, you would, should the need arise, but it's not something that you're going to pin your hat on. Your survival kit for Slovakia. What are your 5 phrases in Slovak that your default phrases?
My 5 phrases. I really like the phrase "naozaj" is quite good, like really. So like, when you're discussing something with someone and you just hear something quite surprising, I think that's a good one. I love "dobre ranko." I think it's quite like a cute phrase, like in the morning.
Ranko.
"Dobre ranko" is something I've got a personal trainer here
I can see,
in a local gym, so
yeah.
I've been trying to make the time for it. So we've used little informal tense "dobre ranko." What are those? "Samozrejme."
Samozrejme,
Of course, "samozrejme" is a good phrase. Oh gosh, you've put me on the spot. I can't think of any other ones.
I like to shock people sometimes. I go, "Chorobish."
"Chorobish." Yeah, what happened?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
And
"Chorobish."
everybody looks so shocked.
Yeah, it's like "Chorobish" or something. "Čo sa stalo?" Like what's happened if someone's sort of kind of panicking. But no, I think one thing that I've been doing language training, and you kind of, it's very formal. You learn like the formal tense, kind of the V case quite a lot. But once you're in country,
It's less formal.
it's less formal, or you still use it to a large degree, but just learning kind of new phrases, new dialects. I met
I'm sorry, I didn't ask your researcher whether you spoke other languages other than Slovak.
In terms of other languages, so you mentioned kind of my Pakistani heritage. So at home, kind of mum and dad spoke Urdu and Punjabi. So I think when you have that as a young child, you sort of just absorb it like a sponge. So I think
Because in the Spanish, Italian, and French, they have the ticame vicame version. So that, like in French, it's tutoyer and vous voyez and usted in Spanish. So it's not unusual to have this formal thing, which is why I love English. Everybody starts on a level pegging.
Yes.
Unless you're an ambassador or a royal where you have a title that precedes you. And so in terms of languages, Urdu, Punjabi.
Yeah, I did a bit of Spanish, but I started Russian and Ukrainian kind of many years ago, but I didn't keep it up. But can read the Cyrillic alphabet, which was very helpful in when posted to Ukraine, because some of the words are quite similar, kind of borrowed from Latin words. But yeah, definitely Slovak, and as you mentioned, kind of the grammatical structure and the kind of 6, or I think there's actually 7 grammar cases.
I know.
That's
They even
been a
decline baby here.
Yeah.
Oh, Babatko's neutral.
Bababka.
Neuter, right?
Yeah.
And some things don't make sense, like Viborn is a council. If you had an excellent council, would it be a Viborn?
Probably.
If you had green
Vibornski
vegetables,
Vibor?
if you had green vegetables, would there be zelenini?
Zelena.
So lots of and cousins, by the way. There's fraternetsi and sesternetsi. Was it? Yeah. Bratanets and sesternets. But there isn't a word for the collective cousins. It's either masculine or feminine. So there's a lot of strange nuance to Slovak language, which is why I gave up.
Yeah.
So now moving to you, the food.
The food.
What are your favorite foods?
Oh, so in terms of Slovak
You've
food,
got a personal trainer, so it's difficult to eat Slovak food and stay trim.
And he is half Slovak, half Italian.
Wow.
So, he's also given me lots of recommendations for Italian food as well. So it's very...
But your staples...
Mixture of like brinjal halushki and pasta. That's quite it's a very rich mixture. So, I've really... I try anything once. So, I'll give anything a go. And brinjal halushki is delicious, and the resin. and the polyafka, the different
Like the
soups and the goulash. So I've really enjoyed that. All quite hearty. But one thing I've also been struck, and maybe you've had this experience with your wife and her family, is that Slovaks are great at growing their own vegetables and their fruit as well. So
Yeah.
whenever I lived in
My Stockler
Slovakia,
is big on the home. She's coming we're going on holiday, so she's coming tomorrow, and without doubt, she'll have a case full of uhorky. So we have enough pickled cucumbers to throw at neighbors. And then
share with your neighbors.
Yeah, and then she has a wonderful garden, and she had a wonderful garden before. All the vegetables are home raised and reared, and then we'd benefit the fruits of her labor. So yes, hospitality is a real, and that's when you're talking to people in the UK about the Slovak sell. Hospitality is at the core of that.
Absolutely, yeah. You cannot enter a Slovak home and not be presented with such an array of delights. No, it's a really
Okay, so
hospitable.
I understand that we're probably coming to an end here. I think Monica's giving me the eye, and not in a good way.
Smiling.
She's smiling because we're very likable people. I want to ask you a personal question. You know, I'm of Pakistani heritage, and I'm British, and I'm proud of both. And you have the trifecta. So you're also of Pakistani heritage, and you have Northern Irish, and you're British as well, is all encompassing. Do you get fed up with people asking you where you originally from?
I think you get less of that. I think certainly when I'm overseas, I think there's a recognition that United Kingdom, given our history and with the Commonwealth, we are a diverse country. People can see our kind of former prime minister, kind of or ministers in cabinet at the moment. They're a real reflection of the United Kingdom. So certainly when I'm overseas, perhaps compared to kind of colleagues maybe a number of years ago, there might have been more of that. But I think nowadays there's a recognition the UK
that
is
it's
a diverse country. It's multicultural. I think what throws people the most actually is my accent, and maybe it's got mellowed a bit. I studied in Scotland, but when I come up with a Northern Irish accent from a brown guy, people are like, oh, I did not expect that.
Yeah.
So that's always quite fun to
So we share
disarm
that.
people.
I studied also in Scotland at the University of Edinburgh. You were at St Andrews, right?
I was at Andrews. Yeah.
So we're not far from each other.
Not far. Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you feel that the world appreciates a more multicultural take on what it is to be British. I'm not sure I share that opinion. I'm tired of having to tell people when I say I'm British. You know, I can wear the socks, I can wear the cufflinks, I can say I was born wherever. That often the case is that, but where you originally from, and not that that's anything I'm going to shy away from. I'm not embarrassed or about my heritage. It was difficult growing up, if I'm honest, because you feel like you want to belong, and you don't know which side you belong, and your parents might be clinging to a different type of heritage. And they want you to be a certain way, and then you want to be a certain way. You know, I grew up with Marmite and Mr. Bean and you know,
real British classics.
Yeah,
Marmite.
and the 99p flake.
Yes.
And Whippy and Jolly Ranchers and all that kind of stuff. But then people often don't regard you as the same, because that's not what's in their mind they envisaged a British person to be. And I see that quite a lot of division in the UK at the moment, unfortunately. Maybe not on a diplomatic level, maybe not in the high ether of multiculturalist foreign service, but certainly on the ground I'm seeing a lot of animosity. Is that something you've had to deal with, or perhaps not? You've been lucky. Maybe I've been unlucky.
I think, just a couple of things. Just firstly on your question about, that whenever people ask, where are you from? I think or where are you really from? I think it's really important to understand their intent. So I think sometimes people are genuinely interested or curious. And I meet some people who I'm curious about, what their heritage is, and they might not have the words that, you think are the right words, but if I can tell, you can tell when someone has the right intent and they just are curious. So I think, I'm quite kind of forgiving in that respect. I always kind of assume the best of people before I sort of kind of assume that it's a loaded question. I mean, just to say, I mean, of course, I've experienced kind of racism. You know, I grew up in Northern Ireland. It was pretty homogenous, and even though I was living there during the Troubles, and you know, I don't identify as Catholic or Protestant, but because it was homogenous, you know, there was kind of racism, and I experienced that at school. Um, as you said, you know, sometimes in the UK we do live in bubbles as well. So, you know, I spent most of my time living in London. So you're sort of in your London bubble. So I think it is important to recognise that there are other parts of the United Kingdom, you know, where actually there are those tensions between communities. So I think, you know, and that, to some degree, that's kind of what if our politicians are kind of keen to look at in terms of getting out and understanding kind of how the population is feeling. And of course, as diplomats as well, because, you know, I'm here representing the whole of the United Kingdom
Sure.
and not just London, not just Northern Ireland. So, you know, one thing I really enjoy doing when I get back to the UK is traveling. I've got friends in Wales. I go back to Scotland every summer, and just kind of being able to understand what they feel, what people are worried about in your home country, because I think that's really key if you're to be that country's ambassador
Sure.
overseas.
And I've got a last question for you, and then we can wrap up. I don't want to take any more of your time or any more of your house up, for that matter. You are our representative, a British representative in the Slovak Republic. And what is your message for the British people of Slovakia?
British people like yourself is, I mean, just keep in touch. You know,
You've already had a gathering that I attended.
Yes,
in an informal manner as
yeah,
well.
and thank you so much for coming. And you know, we had that reception just before Christmas, just to kind of get to know. I think many Brits who I've met here are pretty settled, and you know, kind of just kind of getting on with their lives here. Some are married to Slovaks.
We've all made that mistake.
Like yourself. Some are here, you know, for kind of short postings. But, you know, I think like I am intending to do, just really get out and explore the whole entire country. You know, of course, geographically, kind of Bratislava and Slovakia is brilliant for exploring
Sure.
the rest of the region, but really kind of get to know the country. I know we've discussed the challenge of the language, but certainly I find is that Slovaks really appreciate
The effort.
even at the effort, exactly, and they laugh, but they're not laughing because they're kind of making fun. I think it's because they're so surprised and happy that you're trying their language. So even like small gestures like that, I think, go a really long way in Slovakia.
Well, I think that's about it. I would like to express my gratitude to His Majesty's Ambassador to the Slovak Republic, Bilal Zahid. Thank you so much for joining me on Undiplomatic. You're going to have to forgive the name of my podcast, but it's a deliberate pun, so I think you'll appreciate the irony there. It's been a real joy to talk to you so frankly and so openly, and not only have you opened your home to us, but you've also opened an insight into what it is to be His Majesty's Ambassador to the Slovak Republic. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to have this discussion with you.
Thank you so much, Soph. My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on Undiplomatic. You have been listening to the Undiplomatic podcast, brought to you by Hyatt-Khan.